Are we living in a simulation? And if so, how can we know this? If we are living in a simulation, I certainly would like to know it for the purpose of knowing what reality is not, so that perhaps I can discover reality or know myself. So I'll invite you to go on this sort of thought experiment, we could call it, or process with me as a contemplation, to see if we can determine, are we living in a simulation or not for ourselves? So just kind of come along for the ride and see what you find. Of course, we know that the way the brain functions, the neurology, is that it's hooked into the senses, basically the five senses, and of course thought is there as well. And the information from the senses comes in, is perceived by the nervous system and interpreted by the brain, and then an experience is produced from that. We have sensation, we have sound, we have the world out there, as well as the world in here, the world of our own making, our ideas, our thoughts, our beliefs, our memories, all the content of our minds. But what we actually experience in real time is not the world out there. It takes time for the sensations, the perceptions, we could say, to travel through the nervous system, and for the mind to produce the experience also takes a bit of time, maybe a nanosecond. But even then, even if it were instant, we're still not experiencing the thing itself directly. The mind produces the experience based on the input that it receives. So it's like a receiver and a transmitter. Receives the information and then transmits, or we could say projects, the experience onto the screen of our awareness. So, starting to sound a little bit like a simulation. Well, let's examine it further though. Because if what we're experiencing is not actually the thing, but a recreation, an approximation, and certainly not the totality, very limited spectrum coming in through those five gates. But let's take it a little further, because if all we are experiencing are projections of the mind, and those projections are not going to be 100% accurate, right? We're compressing the information. We're taking out just the smallest amount, we could say, that these five senses are able to gather, and then that information gets compressed because it's too much for our conscious mind to handle. So the most important, or what our awareness or minds or programming, conditioning deems to be the most important, is what we actually experience. But then we experience the projection, the recreation of that by the mind. So this is starting to sound like a distortion a bit. So we don't experience the reality. If out there is the reality, which I'm not saying that it is, remember, we're going to determine if that's the case. But for now, if what's out there is reality, and what I'm experiencing is a recreation, an approximation, a very limited and compressed and distorted recreation, a projection, that's what I'm experiencing. That's the simulation, not the reality. We can liken this sort of to being in a hall of mirrors, in a sense, because if what is being experienced is projections being reflected back to us, the reflective nature of that experience is likened to a mirror. Mirrors reflect back what is put in front of them, but it's not the real thing that we see in the mirror, right? We see a distortion, we see an approximation, we see an image, not the real thing. So let's just, again, take it a little step further and think of the world of your experience for a moment as if you are in a hall of mirrors. You're in this hall of mirrors, let's just say it's about the size of a city block. And there are many, many different types of mirrors and all sorts of distortions. And it's very interesting for a while. It sort of consumes your attention, right? As we go around and explore all the different projections, all the different distortions, we're experiencing all these things, and it's new, right? It's attractive, it's amusing, it's entertaining. So it's consuming our attention. And we sort of get lost in this. We're just exploring, we're going around. Wow, this is so neat. And let's say this goes on for quite some time. And it starts to seem like we're seeing the same images over and again. And after a while, we start to realize that we've seen everything in here, in this hall of mirrors, right? We've seen all the different distortions, all the ways that our bodies and appearances can be twisted and malfigured. And eventually, well, what do you think is going to happen? You've seen it all. And it's all distortion. Well, eventually, I want to see something else. Right? Done with this hall of mirrors. But the more I look, the more I don't find a way out. I'm looking, I'm searching. Don't exactly remember how I even got in here. And everywhere I look for an exit, I just find more mirrors. Well, this is disturbing for a while, right? I'm a little bit anxious and upset about this. Can't find my way out. But I go through a phase of that, and then eventually the emotions settle down, and I realize, well, here I am. I'm here. I'm in this infinite hall of mirrors and distortions, seeing only projections of my own mind. So what to do? Well, everywhere I look out, all I see is a distortion. A projection which is distorted. I don't see the real. I want to find the real, but no matter where I look, I don't see it. All I see is the fake, the false, the counterfeit. After a while, it dawns on me that it can't be out there. Whatever I'm looking for, it's not out there. Can't be. All I see is distortions, projections, basically my own mind being vomited on the screen. I mean, sure, I can look around and find nuance in it, but ultimately it's not satisfying. It's still a projection. It's still a simulation, not the real. So I sit down and I begin to look inside. It's the one place I haven't looked. I look inside and I find the contents of the mind. I find my previous beliefs about who I was, who I thought myself to be, all the memories, all the ideas, all my goals and aspirations. I see all these things. And I'm also hearing the commentary going on about those things, what it means about me and about life, whether I'm a good person, bad person, how I should feel about myself and the world. All this narration going on, commentary. And then it dawns on me, wait a second. What is that sound? Well, that's the sound of your voice. That's the sound of you thinking. Well, no. Actually, if I listen, what if I told you that you've been having auditory hallucinations your entire life and haven't realized it? Because that's what most thought is. Most thinking. What is a hallucination? It's something that's perceived but isn't really there. Just like thought. You perceive it, but no one else does. And yet no one's calling you crazy. Well, some of you maybe. But no one's calling us crazy because everyone is having the same experience. And it's deemed normal. Everyone is having these auditory hallucinations, these sound projections into the mind, which are perceived within, but by no one else but you. They're not really there. But these senses and the thoughts, the content of the mind, this is our compass to discover who we are, isn't it? This is how we know ourselves and navigate the world. But if it's all being simulated and projected and distorted, then does it matter how much data we collect? Like, how much distorted, counterfeit data will we need to realize the truth, to find what we're looking for? So then we start to see how the contents of the mind are like the Hall of Mirrors. It's the same thing. We can explore it endlessly, but ultimately all we find are distortions, projections, counterfeit, not the real. It's not in there. We've searched and searched and searched every corner and cannot find it. Hallucinations are what we find, distortions of reality. So let's say we've searched the contents of the mind over and again, to the point of which we are sick of it. I mean, we've been in this Hall of Mirrors for eons. And so we realize ultimately we sit ourselves down again inside the mind, the mental Hall of Mirrors, and realize, well, whatever I'm looking for, the reality, whatever that is, because I don't know what it is, all I know are hallucinations. But whatever it is, it can't be here. It's not here, it's not in those thoughts, it's not in the memories, it's not in the ideas, the belief systems, the ideologies. It's not here. Okay. So I want to find something other than these hallucinations, these distortions and projections. I want to find the real. But the problem is, I don't know how to see beyond the mind. All I've ever seen is the mind. And it's like a man who wants to see the sky. He's read about the sky, but he's lived in a dark building his entire life, somewhere in the basement. He's heard about it, seen people talk about it. Their eyes light up with the beauty they recall. But he's never experienced it himself. But he's determined. Tonight is the night. It's supposed to be beautiful, clear sky. So he waits. In fact, he goes to sleep and takes a nap. He doesn't want to be tired for this experience. He wants to be wide awake. So he sets an alarm for nighttime. Wakes up, excited to go outside and see the sky, witness it, experience it, know it for the first time in his life. But as he exits the door and looks up, my God, there's a fireworks show going on. Insane amount of fireworks. The grand finale. This must be the end. All he can see are these incredible shows and displays of light. Dazzling. Very, very captivating of his attention. And so he's looking at these for a while, but it's not ending. For a bit, his attention was consumed by the light show, the entertainment. But then he remembers, wait a minute, I wanted to see the sky. Oh, but how am I going to see the sky for all this fireworks going off? Can't do it. Well, waits and waits and waits, but it's unending. Unending. So after a long time, he gives up, says, tonight's not the night, another day. But now he's getting accustomed to going outside regularly. And so throughout the day, he's preparing. And at nighttime, he goes out. But sure enough, fireworks. Crazy, crazy fireworks. All day. And this goes on for eons. But then one day he goes outside in the evening and it's silent. Steps through the door, notices something's different. There's no bangs and crazy lights going off. Wait a second. And he looks up. My God, the infinitude. He's breathless. His mind goes silent. He's in awe. Rapture. Those fireworks in the sky are like the hallucinations of the mind, the constant stream of thought. Our emotional identity. Self-projected and adopted ideas about ourselves. All of these get in the way of knowing the reality. Who you are, who we are, can't be discovered by thought. It's not to be found there. It's not in the mind. Those are projections, distortions, approximations at best. Counterfeit, not the real. Hall of mirrors. It's amusement. But it's not the reality. It's not what's really important. I mean, amusement is only the most important thing for people who have joined the circus. Nothing wrong with it. But it's for entertainment purposes only. And And when we've had enough of the projections of the mind, the distortions in the hall of mirrors, the amusement and entertainment, if you will, eventually, if we're lucky, we get bored or jaded, disheartened. This can't be all there is. I mean, there's still more to discover, but it's like just more of the same. It's more of nuance. It doesn't fulfill, it doesn't satisfy, it's just more. So we sit down, we realize whatever I'm looking for, it's not out there. Can't be. So turn it around. You find the inner hall of mirrors, the fireworks show. That's where the work begins. Clearing out the space. Cleaning up the sky. So that who we are begins to shine through. Some of the cracks that open up in our awareness. Begins to shine through and begin to see and know ourselves directly. Not as an abstraction or a compression or a distortion or a projection. The real. This is our life's purpose. Discover, know thyself. I think it's the beginning and the end. Well, that's just my thought. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate your time. Hope you're enjoying this lovely day. And if you're in pain and not enjoying it, I get it. I've been there too. So sending you a blessing that you move through that pain well. Till next time, my friends.